The stars had not changed. Commander Zirith stood at the viewing window of her ship and watched the distant sun grow larger as they approached. This yellow star was old and unremarkable. It sat in a quiet corner of the galaxy where nothing important had ever happened. At least, that was what the ancient records said. 30,000 years ago, a Valkyrie research vessel called the Eternal Dawn had traveled to this system. The crew had been mapping primitive worlds and cataloging species that might one day be useful to the Empire. They had found a small blue planet orbiting this yellow sun. The planet was covered mostly in water, with patches of green and brown land. It was a young world, full of life but empty of intelligence. The researchers had observed the dominant species for several rotations. These creatures walked on two legs and used their front limbs for grasping. They lived in caves and wore the skins of animals they killed. They had discovered fire, but little else. They fought each other with sticks and stones. They died young from diseases and injuries that Valkyrie medicine had cured 10,000 years before. The research team had given their report to the High Council. Species shows minimal cognitive development. No signs of language beyond primitive sounds. Estimated time to basic civilization is 50,000 years or more. Recommendation is to mark for future observation and move on. The High Council had agreed. Earth was not worth their time, but then disaster struck. The Eternal Dawn suffered a catastrophic failure in its main power systems. The crystalline cores that powered the ship cracked and began leaking radiation. The crew had barely enough time to evacuate onto a rescue shuttle. They watched from orbit as their ship fell through the atmosphere and crashed into a deep ocean trench. The vessel sank to the bottom and disappeared into the darkness. The rescue shuttle returned to Valkyrie space. The crew was debriefed and reassigned. A report was filed about the lost vessel. The High Council discussed whether to send a recovery team, but decided against it. The Eternal Dawn carried valuable technology, but the journey was long and the costs were high. The primitive planet was too far away. The crystalline cores would remain stable for millennia. They could always go back later. Later never came. The Valkyrie Empire had other concerns. Wars broke out along their borders. Resources became scarce. Colony worlds rebelled. The great civilization that had once ruled a quarter of the galaxy began to shrink. Each generation was smaller than the last. Each decade brought new problems and fewer solutions, but the coordinates of that primitive blue world remained in their databases. And the crystalline cores of the Eternal Dawn remained at the bottom of an alien ocean. Waiting. Now, 30,000 years after the crash. The Valkyrie had finally returned. Commander Zirith turned away from the window and walked to the center of her bridge. Her second officer, Callus, stood ready at the navigation console. The rest of the crew worked quietly at their stations. This was a small ship with a small crew. The Empire could not spare more for a simple recovery mission. "How long until we reach the planet?" Zirith asked. 4 hours at current speed, Callus replied. His scales were a pale blue color that showed his youth and inexperience. This was his first deep space mission. The coordinates matched the ancient records exactly. The planet should be directly ahead. Zirith allowed herself a small moment of satisfaction. This mission would save her career, and perhaps her life. The crystalline cores aboard the Eternal Dawn were worth more than entire star systems in the current economy. The Empire needed those cores. Zirith would be the one to deliver them. "The natives should pose no problem," she said confidently. According to the records, they were barely using tools when we last visited. Even with rapid development, they cannot have advanced far. We will descend, locate the wreckage, extract the cores, and leave. Simple. Callus nodded but said nothing. He had been taught to trust his commander without question. The Valkyrie military demanded absolute obedience from its officers. Doubt was weakness. Questions were failure. The hours passed slowly. Zirith reviewed the ancient records again and again. She studied the images of the primitive creatures with their flat faces and strange hair-covered heads. She read the research notes, describing their simple social structures and limited communication. These beings were barely more than animals. They would likely run and hide when the Vulthury ship descended from the sky. "Commander," Callus said suddenly. His voice was strange. "I am detecting something unusual." Zirith looked up from her records. "Explain." "There are objects in orbit around the planet. Thousands of them. They appear to be artificial." The commander walked quickly to the sensor station. She looked at the display and felt her body go cold. The screen showed the blue planet surrounded by a cloud of metal. Structures, satellites, stations, things that should not exist around a world of cave-dwelling primitives. "That is not possible," she whispered. The sensor officer made a sound of distress. "Commander, I am detecting energy signatures from the surface. Cities, massive cities covering much of the land. And there are signals on every communication frequency. Thousands of them, millions." Zirith gripped the edge of the console. Her claws left marks in the metal. This could not be happening. The records clearly stated that these creatures were primitive. They were supposed to be throwing rocks at each other. They were not supposed to have satellites in cities and communication networks. "Commander," Callus said, and now his voice was trembling. "Ships are rising from the planet. They are heading directly toward us." Zirith looked at the tactical display. 12 vessels were approaching at incredible speed. Their design was unlike anything in Vulthury databases. They were sleek and angular and radiating power that made her sensors scream with warnings. Each one was larger than her entire ship. Each one carried weapons that her systems could not even identify. "Impossible," she said again. But the evidence was right in front of her. The primitive species had not stayed primitive. In 30,000 years, they had gone from caves to the stars. And now they were coming to meet their visitors. A transmission came through on the main channel. A voice spoke in a language that the computer quickly translated. It was calm and steady and carried no fear at all. "Unknown vessel. This is the Terran Defense Fleet. You have entered protected space. Identify yourself immediately and state your purpose. Any hostile action will be met with overwhelming force." Commander Zirith stared at the screen. The ships were close now. Close enough that she could see their hulls gleaming in the starlight. Close enough that she could read the names, painted on their sides in an alien script. She had come here expecting to find animals. She had found something else entirely. Admiral Jack Morrison had been sleeping when the alert came through. One moment he was dreaming of his childhood home in Montana, and the next moment red lights were flashing and sirens were screaming throughout the station. He was on his feet and dressed within 60 seconds. 30 years in the military had taught him to move fast. The orbital station called Horizon's Edge was humanity's first line of defense. It hung in high orbit above Earth, watching the sky for threats that had never come. For 3 centuries, humans had expanded across the stars without meeting another intelligent species. Some scientists said they were alone in the universe. Others said the galaxy was simply very large and very empty. Jack had never believed either theory. He knew that something was out there. He had spent his career preparing for the day when that something would arrive. That day had finally come. Jack reached the command center in less than 5 minutes. Commander Kate Sullivan was already there, standing at the central display with a tablet in her hand. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had served under Jack for 15 years, and he trusted her completely. "What do we have?" Jack asked as he took his position. Kate pointed at the display. A small vessel was approaching Earth from deep space. It was shaped like a long cylinder with strange curved wings along its sides. The design matched nothing in human records, but the energy readings were clear. This was an alien ship. It entered the system about 6 hours ago, Kate explained. We tracked it from the outer monitoring stations. It is heading directly for Earth on a precise trajectory. No attempt to hide or evade detection. Jack studied the ship's specifications. It was small compared to human vessels, maybe 200 meters long at most. The weapon systems appeared to be basic plasma cannons. The engines were some kind of chemical propulsion that humans had stopped using centuries ago. The shields were weak and the hull was thin. They are not here to fight, Jack said quietly. Not with that ship. They would be destroyed in seconds. Agreed, Kate replied. But what are they here for? Lieutenant Ben Carter called out from the communications station. He was young and eager, barely 25 years old. Admiral, the alien vessel is transmitting on an open frequency. They are hailing us. Jack nodded. Let me hear it. The message played through the speakers. The alien language was harsh and clicking, full of sounds that human throats could not produce. But the translation software worked quickly. Within seconds, English words appeared on the screen. Primitive inhabitants of this world, we are the Vulturi. We have come to retrieve property that belongs to our empire. A vessel crashed on your planet 30,000 years ago. You will allow us to recover it. You will not interfere. This is not a request. Jack read the message twice. He felt a cold anger building in his chest, but he kept his face calm. He had dealt with arrogant enemies before. This was no different. They think we are primitives, Kate said. There was amusement in her voice. They have no idea what they are dealing with. Jack allowed himself a small smile. Let us introduce ourselves. Kate scrambled the defensive fleet. Full formation around the alien vessel. Do not fire unless fired upon. Kate gave the orders immediately. 12 Terran warships that had been waiting in orbit began to move. They were massive vessels, each one over 2 kilometers long. Their hulls were made of composite materials that could withstand direct nuclear strikes. Their weapons could crack planets. Their engines could cross the galaxy in weeks. The alien ships stopped moving. Jack imagined the crew inside, watching as the human fleet surrounded them. He wondered what they were feeling. Confusion, perhaps. Or fear. Open a channel, Jack ordered. Visual and audio. Ben worked quickly at his station. Channel open, Admiral. Jack straightened his uniform and faced the camera. He spoke clearly and calmly, knowing that his words were being translated and sent across space to the alien vessel. This is Admiral Jack Morrison of the Terran Defense Fleet. You have entered our territory without permission. Your demands are noted and rejected. However, we are not hostile. We are willing to discuss your presence here in a peaceful manner. Please respond. There was silence for a long moment. Then the alien commander appeared on the screen. Jack studied her carefully. She was tall and covered in green scales that shimmered under the lights of her bridge. Her eyes were large and yellow with narrow black pupils. Her mouth was filled with small, sharp teeth. She looked like a reptile from Earth's ancient past, but there was clear intelligence in her gaze. And something else. Something that looked very much like fear. I am Commander Zereth of the Vulturi Empire, she said through the translator. You are making a grave mistake. The Vulturi have ruled this region of space for 50,000 years. We have conquered countless worlds and subjugated hundreds of species. You would be wise to submit now and avoid destruction. Jack said nothing for a moment. He glanced at Kate, who was trying not to laugh. He looked at the tactical display, which showed the alien ship surrounded by 12 human warships. The power difference was absurd. The Valkyrie vessel was like a small fish surrounded by whales. "Commander Zirith," Jack said slowly. "I mean no disrespect, but I think you should look at your sensors again. Compare your weapons to ours. Compare your shields to ours. Compare your ship to the fleet that surrounds you." He leaned forward slightly. 30,000 years ago, my ancestors lived in caves. They hunted with spears and painted pictures on stone walls. They looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. They never imagined that one day their children would travel between those stars like walking across a field. Jack paused to let the words sink in. "We are not the primitives you expected to find. We have changed. We have grown. And we do not respond well to threats." Zirith stared at him through the screen. Her yellow eyes were wide and her scales had gone pale. Jack recognized the expression. He had seen it on the faces of many enemies over the years, but it was the look of someone who had just realized they had made a terrible mistake. "What do you want?" Zirith asked. Her voice was quieter now. The arrogance was gone. Jack smiled. It was not a threatening smile. It was the smile of a patient teacher speaking to a confused student. "I want to talk," he said simply. "Come aboard our station. Bring your officers. Let us sit down together and discuss this like civilized beings. No threats. No demands. Just a conversation." He spread his hands in a gesture of openness. "After all, Commander, we have 30,000 years of history to catch up on." The shuttle that carried Commander Zirith to the human station was small and fast. It crossed the distance between the ships in minutes. Zirith sat in silence with her second officer Callus and 2 guards at her sides. None of them spoke. There was nothing to say. Through the window, Zirith watched the human warships as she passed them. Each vessel was enormous beyond imagination. The smallest of them was 10 times the size of her own ship. Their hulls were smooth and dark, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. Strange symbols were painted along their sides in bright colors. Names, perhaps, or warnings. The shuttle docked at a port on the side of the orbital station. The doors opened with a soft hiss, and Zirith stepped into a corridor that stretched ahead of her like a tunnel through a mountain. The walls were white and clean. Soft lights glowed from hidden sources in the ceiling. The air was fresh and carried a faint scent of something sweet that Zirith could not identify. A human woman was waiting for them. She was older than the others Zirith had seen, with lines on her face and gray streaks in her dark hair. She wore a simple uniform of blue and silver. Her smile was warm and genuine. "Commander Zirith, welcome to Horizon's Edge. I am Dr. Laura Bennett. I study other cultures and species. Admiral Morrison asked me to guide you to the meeting room." Zirith nodded stiffly. She did not trust the smile. In her experience, smiles usually hid sharp teeth. They walked through the station together. Laura explained things as they went, pointing out different sections and describing their purposes. The station held over 10,000 people. It was a city in space, with living quarters and recreation areas and medical facilities and schools for the children who lived aboard with their families. Zirith listened but said nothing. Each revelation made her feel smaller. The meeting room was large and comfortable. A long table sat in the center with chairs arranged around it. Admiral Morrison was already there, along with Commander Sullivan and several other human officers. They stood as the Valkyrie entered and gestured toward empty seats. "Please sit," Morrison said. "We have much to discuss." Zirith sat across from the Admiral. Callus took a seat beside her. The guards stood against the wall, trying to look threatening but succeeding only in looking nervous. They were young soldiers who had never faced real combat. They had expected to recover a crash ship from a primitive world. They had not expected any of this. "Let us begin with history," Laura Bennett said. She touched a panel on the table, and a holographic display appeared in the air above them. 30,000 years ago, when your ship crashed on our world, humanity was indeed primitive. We lived in small groups. We hunted and gathered food. We had no written language, no metal tools, no understanding of the universe beyond our immediate surroundings. The display showed images of ancient humans. They were dressed in animal skins and carrying wooden spears. Their faces were painted with colored mud. They looked like wild creatures, and Xerath felt a moment of grim satisfaction. The records had been accurate. These beings really had been primitives, but then the images changed. 12,000 years ago, we discovered agriculture, Lavra continued. We learned to grow crops and raise animals. We built permanent settlements that grew into cities. We developed writing and mathematics and astronomy. We began to understand the laws that govern the universe. The display showed ancient cities rising from the earth. Stone temples and palaces. Libraries filled with scrolls. Ships sailing across blue oceans. 500 years ago, we entered what we call the Industrial Age. We learned to harness steam and electricity. We built machines that could do the work of thousands. We connected our world with roads and rails and wires. We began to dream of reaching beyond our planet. Xerath watched factories and trains and early aircraft appear on the display. The speed of development was disturbing. Her own species had taken 50,000 years to achieve what these humans had done in a fraction of that time. 150 years ago, we developed nuclear power and sent our first satellites into orbit. We walked on our moon. We sent probes to other planets in our system. We peered out at the stars and wondered if we were alone. The display showed rockets launching from the surface of Earth. Humans in bulky white suits floating in the emptiness of space. Flags planted on the gray surface of the moon. 90 years ago, we discovered the principles of faster-than-light travel, Laura said. Her voice was calm, almost casual. We built our first starships. We colonized Mars and the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. We ventured beyond our solar system to other stars. We found worlds that we could live on, and we made them our homes. Callus made a sound of distress beside Xerath. She understood his fear. The Valkyrie had spent 10,000 years trying to unlock the secrets of faster-than-light travel. They had achieved only crude warp bubbles that took decades to cross short distances. And these humans, these former primitives, had solved the problem in less than a century. Today, humanity occupies 12 star systems, Lavra concluded. We have a population of 40 billion spread across dozens of worlds and stations. Our technology has advanced beyond anything we could have imagined just a few generations ago. We are no longer the cave dwellers your ancestors observed. We are something new. The display faded. The room was silent. Admiral Morrison leaned forward and looked directly at Xerath. His eyes were kind but firm. Commander, you came here expecting to find animals. You found us instead. The ship that crashed in our ocean was recovered 300 years ago. We studied it. We learned from it. And then we moved beyond it. Your crystalline power cores are museum pieces now. Interesting artifacts from a forgotten age, but nothing more. Xerath felt the ground shifting beneath her. Everything she had believed, everything she had been taught about the superiority of the Valkyrie Empire, was crumbling like old stone. That is impossible, she said. Her voice was weak even to her own ears. No species develops that quickly. It defies all known models of cultural evolution. Lavra Bennett smiled gently. Commander, humanity has never followed the rules that other species expected of us. We adapt. We innovate. We refuse to accept limits. When we are told something cannot be done, we find a way to do it anyway. She gestured at the station around them. This is what 30,000 years of determination looks like. This is what happens when a species refuses to give up. Zirith said nothing. There was nothing to say. She had come here to reclaim lost property from a backward world. Instead, she had discovered that the backward world had become something far beyond her understanding, and she was beginning to suspect that this was only the beginning. Commander Zirith did not believe them. She could not believe them. The story they told was too incredible, too impossible. Species did not advance that quickly. It violated every principle of evolutionary science that the Velthari had developed over 50,000 years. There had to be some trick, some deception. Perhaps the humans had found another advanced species and stolen their technology. Perhaps they had discovered ancient ruins left by a long-dead civilization. There had to be an explanation. "You do not believe us," Admiral Morrison said. It was not a question. He could see the doubt in her yellow eyes. That is understandable. Words are easy. Anyone can make claims. You want proof. Zirith nodded stiffly. Show me. Show me what you say you can do. Morrison looked at Commander Sullivan, who smiled that strange human smile that Zirith was beginning to find deeply unsettling. Follow us, Kate Sullivan said. We have prepared a small tour. They left the station aboard a larger shuttle. The craft was comfortable and fast, with wide windows that allowed the passengers to see everything around them. Zirith sat near the front with Callus beside her. Laura Bennett joined them, ready to explain what they would see. Their first destination was the moon that orbited Earth. Zirith had studied the records of this moon. 30,000 years ago, it had been a dead rock covered in craters and dust. Nothing lived there. Nothing could live there. As the shuttle approached, Zirith saw that everything had changed. The surface of the moon was covered with domes and structures of metal and glass. Lights glowed from thousands of windows. Vehicles moved along roads that crisscrossed the gray landscape. Gardens of green plants were visible inside the largest domes, growing under artificial suns. Luna Base 7, Lavra explained. Over 2 million people live here permanently. We mine minerals from the lunar rock, manufacture goods in low-gravity factories, and train our astronauts for deep space missions. This base was built 400 years ago and has been expanding ever since. The shuttle descended toward a massive construction facility on the far side of the moon. Zirith pressed her face against the window and stared at the scene below. Human workers in protective suits moved around a ship that was being built in an open framework. The ship was enormous. It stretched for kilometers across the lunar surface. Its hull was only half complete, but Zirith could already see the power systems being installed in its core. This is a new class of colony ship, Kate Sullivan said. She pointed at the vessel with obvious pride. When finished, it will carry 3 million people to a new world we have discovered on the far side of the galaxy. The journey will take about 6 months. 6 months. Zirith calculated the distance in her head. A Velthari ship would need 300 years to travel that far. These humans were discussing it as casually as a walk to the market. The power source, Zirith said carefully. What drives such a vessel? 0-point energy, Lara replied. We extract power directly from the quantum vacuum. It is clean and virtually unlimited. We developed the technology about 2 centuries ago. 0-point energy. The Velthari had theorized about such things for millennia. They had never come close to achieving it. The mathematics were too complex. The engineering was impossible. And yet here were humans building starships powered by forces that the greatest Velthari scientists considered fantasy. The tour continued. The shuttle left the moon and traveled to Mars, the 4th planet from the sun. Zirith had read about Mars in the ancient records. It had been a cold, dead world covered in rust-colored dust. No air, no water, no life. But as they approached, Zirith saw oceans. She saw clouds. She saw forests of green and blue covering the continents. She saw cities gleaming in the sunlight, connected by networks of roads and rails. She saw birds flying through an atmosphere that should not exist. Terraforming, Lavra explained simply. We changed Mars. We gave it air and water and warmth. We planted seeds and let nature do the rest. It took 200 years, but now Mars is home to 5 billion people. It is one of our most successful colonies. Zirith could not speak. She stared at the transformed world and felt something break inside her. The Valkyrie had never terraformed anything. They had always searched for worlds that were already suitable for life. The idea of changing an entire planet to match their needs had never occurred to them. But humans did not search for suitable worlds. Humans made worlds suitable. They did not accept the universe as it was. They changed it to match their desires. The shuttle returned to Horizon's Edge, but the tour was not over. Lieutenant Sam Griffin was waiting for them in a small demonstration room. He was a young man with a friendly face and calm eyes. In his hand, he held a device no larger than an apple. This is called a full drive, Sam said. He held up the device so everyone could see it. It creates a temporary wormhole that connects 2 points in space. Watch. He pressed a button on the device. The air in the center of the room seemed to bend and twist. A hole appeared out of nothing, perfectly round and glowing with pale blue light. Through the hole, Zirith could see a different room. Different walls. Different people walking past in the background. That room is on a station orbiting Alpha Centauri, Sam explained casually. About 4 light years away. I could step through this portal right now and be there instantly. When I release the button, the portal closes. He released the button. The portal vanished as if it had never existed. Every soldier in our military carries one of these, Sam continued. Emergency evacuation. If they get in trouble, they can fold themselves to safety anywhere in human space. Callus made a sound of pure distress. Zirith understood completely. The Valkyrie considered warp travel to be the height of their technological achievement. They used massive ships with enormous power plants to create tiny bubbles of warp space. The journey from Valkyrie space to Earth had taken their vessel nearly 2 years, and these humans gave personal faster-than-light devices to their common soldiers. How? Zirith whispered. The word came out broken and lost. How did you achieve all of this? Admiral Morrison had been standing quietly near the door. Now he stepped forward and spoke. We are a stubborn species, Commander. When we face a problem, we do not stop until we solve it. When we face an obstacle, we do not go around it. We go through it. We have survived ice ages and plagues and wars and disasters that should have destroyed us 100 times over. Each time, we came back stronger. He stood directly in front of her, and Zirith saw something in his eyes that she had never seen in the eyes of any other species. It was fire. It was determination. It was a refusal to accept defeat under any circumstances. Your ancestors looked at our ancestors and saw animals, Morrison said quietly. They saw primitives who would never amount to anything. They dismissed us and forgot about us. That was their mistake. He gestured at the walls around them, at the station and the ships and all the wonders that humanity had built. This is what we became while you were not watching. And we are not finished yet. We are still growing, still learning, still reaching for things that others say are impossible. Zirith felt very small. Now, Morrison said, and his voice became gentle. Shall we discuss why you really came here? The meeting room was quiet now. Most of the officers had left. Only Admiral Morrison, Commander Sullivan, and Dr. Bennett remained on the human side. Commander Zirith sat alone across the table. She had sent Callus and the guards back to their ship. She did not want them to see what she was about to do. She was about to beg. "The crystalline cores?" Xerath said slowly. "You said you recovered them 300 years ago. You said they are museum pieces now. Artifacts. Nothing more." Morrison nodded. "That is correct. Then perhaps you would be willing to give them to us. To sell them. To trade for something we might have that you would want." Her voice was calm, but inside she was desperate. The Velthari Empire was dying. Every year, more colony worlds went dark. Every decade, the borders shrank. Resources that had once seemed infinite were running out. The crystalline cores from the eternal dawn represented wealth beyond measure. With those cores, the Empire might survive another 1,000 years. Without them, the end was only a matter of time. Kate Sullivan looked at her with eyes that seemed to see everything. "Commander, may I speak honestly?" Xerath nodded. "We have been watching your people for centuries. Our deep space probes have monitored your transmissions. Our researchers have studied your culture and history. We know things about the Velthari that perhaps you do not even know about yourselves." Xerath felt a chill run through her scales. "What do you mean?" Kate glanced at Morrison, who nodded permission. She turned back to Xerath and spoke without emotion. "Your empire peaked 8,000 years ago. Since then, you have been in slow decline. Your population has shrunk by 40%. You have lost control of nearly half your territory. Your resource extraction has become increasingly desperate. Your colonies are failing one by one. Civil unrest is growing in your core systems. Your military is a shadow of what it once was." Each word was like a blade cutting into Xerath's chest. She wanted to deny it. She wanted to call this human a liar. But she could not. Everything Kate said was true. "Your government knows this," Kate continued. "Your leaders have known for centuries. But they hide the truth from your people. They pretend that the Empire is still strong. They send missions like yours to recover ancient technology because they cannot develop new technology anymore. Your scientists have stagnated. Your innovators have given up. Your people have accepted decline as inevitable." Xerath sat in silence. She had nothing to say. The truth was too heavy to argue against. Dr. Larva Bennett spoke gently. "Commander, why do you think you were sent here? Your government knew the risks. They knew that the primitive species they remembered might have changed. They sent you anyway because they had no other choice. They are that desperate." Xerath closed her yellow eyes. She thought of her home world. She thought of the streets of the capital city where she had grown up. She remembered how the buildings had seemed so tall and magnificent when she was young. Now she understood that they were crumbling. The whole empire was crumbling. And she had been sent on a fool's errand to salvage scraps from a forgotten past. "What do you want from us?" She whispered. "You have shown us your power. You have proven that you could destroy us without effort. Is this the moment when you demand our surrender? Is this when you tell us to submit or be destroyed?" The room was silent for a long moment. Then Admiral Morrison did something that Xerath did not expect. He laughed. It was not a cruel laugh or a mocking laugh. It was warm and genuine and full of something she did not understand. "Commander," he said softly, "we do not want to destroy you. We do not want to conquer you. We do not want revenge for being dismissed as primitives 30,000 years ago." Xerath opened her eyes and stared at him. "Then what do you want?" Morrison stood and walked to the window. Outside, the blue and green sphere of Earth turned slowly in the darkness. "When I was a child," he said quietly, "my grandfather told me a story. He said that the mark of a truly great civilization is not how it treats its equals. It is how it treats those who are weaker, those who are struggling, those who need help." He turned back to face her. Your empire is dying, Commander. Your people are suffering. You came here hoping to steal scraps from your past because you have lost faith in your future. You expected us to meet you with hostility because that is all you have ever known. Morrison walked back to the table and sat down across from Xerath. His eyes were kind. They held no trace of anger or resentment or triumph. We are offering you something different. We are offering you partnership, alliance, friendship. Xerath could not believe what she was hearing. You would help us? After we dismissed you as animals? After we abandoned you for 30,000 years? After we came here making demands and threats? Kate Sullivan smiled. Yes, we would help you anyway. But why? Lavra Bennett answered. Because helping others is who we are, Commander. We did not climb from caves to the stars just to become another empire of conquerors. We did not survive ice ages and wars and plagues just to repeat the mistakes of other civilizations. We became what we are because we learned that the universe is vast and cold and lonely. And the only way to survive in such a universe is together. Morrison reached across the table. He extended his hand toward Xerath in that strange human gesture of peace. We will share our technology with you, our resources, our knowledge. We will help you rebuild your worlds and restore your people. We will stand beside you against whatever threats the galaxy might bring. Not because we have to, not because we gain from it, but because it is right. Xerath stared at his hand. In all her years of military service, in all her studies of galactic history, she had never encountered anything like this. Species conquered each other. They exploited each other. They destroyed each other. That was the way of the universe. That was the only truth she had ever known. But these humans were offering something else. Something that should not exist. They were offering hope. I do not understand, she said softly. You have the power to rule the galaxy. You could crush the Velthari and take everything we have. Why would you choose mercy instead? Morrison kept his hand extended. His smile was patient and warm. Because we remember what it was like to be alone and afraid and struggling to survive. We remember being the primitives that nobody believed in. And we promised ourselves that if we ever had the power to help others, we would use it. Not for conquest. Not for revenge. Something better. Xerath looked at his hand for a long moment. She thought of her home. She thought of her people. She thought of everything that the Velthari had lost and everything they still stood to lose. And then she reached out and took the human admiral's hand. His grip was warm and strong. His eyes were bright with something that the Velthari had forgotten existed. It was joy. It was compassion. It was the simple pleasure of helping someone in need. Welcome to the future, Commander, Morrison said quietly. Let us build it together. Xerath felt tears forming in her eyes. Real tears. A reaction she had not experienced since childhood. The humans had achieved something far more terrifying than weapons or technology or power. They had achieved kindness, and that, more than anything else, showed Commander Xerath just how far humanity had truly come.